supposedly we are live, so hopefully you can see us all. And this is our budget preamble that is before the wonderful event tonight, which is the Budget 2026, the federal budget for Australia. And I'm joined with a couple of others, dudes who actually really love this stuff, which is good because I know that you all love it, but you watch it begrudgingly. Whereas these two dudes with me tonight actually really love this stuff. And I'm joined on my right here by Ben, the accountant. Ben, welcome.
Thank you.
And Steve, financial planner, on my left.
Thank you.
Yep. So
Welcome.
that is the three of us. Now, this is how it's going to work tonight. We're going to have a bit of a discussion of what we've been hearing around the traps before the budget comes out, which is now. Then we're going to stream the budget here. So you don't need to go anywhere else. You can watch the budget live through this stream here. We'll flick over to Channel 9, I think, at 7:30 to watch the budget. And then straight after that, we're going to cut from them and we'll be back on and we'll discuss your questions and, of course, our notes that we've made as we hear Mr. Jim Chalmers give his budget speech of the year. So what is his fifth budget, I think they said it was. Yeah. I mean, who's counting, right? Once you're after four?
Who's counting? And one of the concerns is that they got voted in on some promises that they're certainly not delivering, and one of them being the negative gearing concession. So there's a lot of concern around what that impact is going to be. Now, to be honest, I don't have a problem with the saying that all new investments should be on new builds. I don't have a problem with that. It stimulates growth and it's a great thing. However, the way that they want to manage the credits and the way they want to go after existing markets is a bit of concern, because obviously, if you think about it, if a young couple have bought a house 5 years ago and now growing a family, when they go to sell that property, there's going to be less buyers straight out. There's no investors available to that market because they've got to buy a new build. So concerns around
that's an interesting one, right, isn't it? It's almost like it's a short-term fix to a longer-term problem.
It's a short-term fix because no matter how you try to do it this way, the bottom line is build more properties, release more land. And when you release more land, don't let the builders or the developers sell 4 units at a time or 5 properties at a time. They should be, if it's going to house 18,000 houses, let's get 5,000 out of go into the market. That will reduce the restriction of competition and get money into the market flowing well. And so housing's always a concern. I'm not sure since COVID, even though we lost a lot of people due to COVID, somehow we still don't have enough housing. And that can reflect back to the decisions made back in 2014. So
yeah, that's right. And it makes you wonder how that's always the case. I mean, I looked at some figures today that said if the negative gearing stuff comes through, then we're going to be short again on housing, another 26,000 or something in the next 5 years, on top of what we're already going to be short of, which is an interesting dilemma. Of course, what I will say, and we think we should keep something straight here, is that there's a lot of talk about if property investors get out of the market, there's less rentals, but those properties don't disappear, right? I mean, they're still either occupied or they're not.
Yeah, that's correct.
Now, if they are occupied, they're either occupied by a tenant or an owner. And I think that what often gets skipped over is that, well, can a rental, like someone who's renting now, can they become an owner? I mean,
can they make the jump?
Can they make the jump? And I think that should be talked about more, because perhaps there should be some incentive around doing that rather than just saying this way or this way is the answer. When if we're trying to encourage home ownership, well, then maybe there's some incentive from the fact of a sale that happens from an investor to an owner-occupier, right, to get that owner-occupier, first-time owner-occupier or a second-time, whatever, into a house. Because I'll tell you what doesn't happen from mum and dad investor perspective is that they don't go, oh, let's get the tenant out and we'll have the house vacant.
No, unless they've
doesn't happen, right?
Unless they've got a high, crazy tax write-down that they require, then no, most of those probably commercials a bit different, but
sure.
But primaries and that, I think the biggest problem is, and if you go back prior to the current government being voted in, is that they were saying, like, let's go first-home buyers, let's look after first-home buyers. The problem with that principle is a lot of first-home buyers still don't have the money. Property is just so expensive.
Sure.
And if you go and do 5% and 10% deposits, you will never pay that property off, and you will be giving money to the bank's hand over fist, It's a very long time.
It's huge.
And the problem is still comes back to price and options. There's just not the volume of product available in the marketplace.
I mean, this is the crux of. And look, I'm not going to say that it's an easy thing to solve,
No.
right? So, how do you either make it more affordable, accessible, whatever word you want to use, to buy a property without drastically reducing the price of properties in the market and upsetting the huge voter base that's already there for you? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because the thing is, a first home owner is only that once, right? Once they're in, they want their property to go up in price. They don't want it to go down, right? So whilst the view or the goal or the life plan is to get a property and do this and that and what have you, if you had two equal age, right, where they're 18, where they're 28, doesn't matter what age they are, could be 35 buying their first home, mate, as soon as they've got their first home, they're not going to care about their mates, right? They want what everyone else has had, their property to go up in price, inflation, hedged, whatever it is going to be,
100%.
Right? So I think that is impossible to manage from a government legislative perspective, to try and legislate a dynamic market such as property. I think it's a very interesting thing that they're trying to do.
Putting the guardrails on, it's just not going to work. That's the thing. They're trying to say, oh, do this, but do that. And
Yeah.
You've got investors in a free market choosing what they want to do. And I think this is the thing is, I do believe this getting rid of the negative gearing is just going to change the way we invest in property. I think Australia's still going to love property. It's just going to change how we do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they're always going to love property.
Yeah.
I can't see that changing. Can you see that changing?
Look, I can't see it changing. And, when you look at some of the options that could probably be available in the marketplace, when they say, intergenerational wealth and talking about, the rich people buying property, well, I think the management of that could be slightly easier versus what we're doing to the mum and dad investors who own their own home, working multiple jobs, don't travel, don't do everything.
That's right.
And have an investment property. So if you say, in today's dollars, your cap in investment properties is $4 million, whether it's made up of 2 properties, 3 properties, 4 properties, 5 properties.
Or one, whatever.
Whatever it is. But once you get above the $4 million, none of this stuff applies.
Yeah.
There is no capital gains discounts. There is no write-downs on that property. That's yours.
Yeah.
You bought it for a reason.
Yeah.
But up to $4 million in current value, we'll assist you under that program. And what that will restrict is the high net wealth people buying up 30 properties.
Sure.
And it'll allow the mum and dads to continue to do what they need to do to survive. Because if they're not going to be able to claim off their tax at the end of a financial year, some of the credits that are associated with buying a property, they just may not be able to afford it.
That's right.
They don't have the bank account to hold it. So
that's right. And you both deal with mum and dads. Do you deal with many high net wealths in your businesses?
We do have the mix of them. And to be honest, that negative gearing on big scale is actually part of their strategy. You have these things where you do have these, and to say it, like these doctors and specialists who earn that $1 million. $1 million, you're paying $300,000-$400,000 in tax. Negative gearing makes sense. They're not buying small properties though. They're buying commercial. They're buying those bigger items. Now, I appreciate you take that negative gearing out of the market. The tax office has a bigger revenue base, but all you're really probably doing is handing those investments back to the commercial investors.
That's how excited I am about tonight.
The
pens can't even survive it. So, Ben's right. All the high net clients have a different goal and objective.
Yeah.
So they're not looking to go and buy the house down the street. They live in Blacktown. They're not buying another place in Blacktown. They're buying commercial premises.
Yeah.
In a lot of cases, they're operating businesses from them.
Mm-hmm.
They might have a strategy to buy that commercial property in their own name to take the tax benefits associated to it and then shift it across to an SMSF later on in life so that there's ability to manage the capital gains tax associated with that property. So there's many different ways for all that work, but the high net clients work differently to the mum and dad investors. This doesn't get high net. This just goes after mum and dads.
No,
and that's
I agree.
a problem.
I agree. And look, if you've just joined us, this is our budget preamble. We'll flick to the budget live on this stream, so you don't need to go anywhere at 7:30 when Mr. Jim Chalmers jumps up to dance in front of us and read his script. So stay tuned for that. And I'm joined by Steve, the financial planner, and Ben, the accountant. So if you've got any questions, put them in the comment box wherever you're watching this, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, whatever. It'll pop up here and we'll be able to answer them, what have you. So, yeah. So back on the mums and dads, it's interesting because I think that's the ones that get hurt by this sort of stuff, and yet Labor's the ones who say that they're for the people, the mums and dads. You know
Well,
what I mean?
100%. They're trying to bring out a cost of living relief package, and the concerns around that is how does that affect inflation?
Mm.
Because inflation also hurts the mum and dads the most. It doesn't hurt the high nets. And so if you go out and do whatever the package relief is going to be, a $3,000 or $1,000 tax credit or whatever it's going to be, you still have the problem where that may lead to extra spending, like we saw with COVID, where people were supposed to draw super down just for support themselves, and yet people were buying cars and everything with it.
Yeah.
The amount of people who drew down was incredibly massive. It was a lot more than the government predicted. So when we look at things like relief, the relief is aimed at mum and dads. They're the ones buying the groceries and foods for their kids and stuff like that.
Yep.
But the biggest thing, like if you read The Guardian recently, their biggest concern is the pressure on inflation. And the more that you stimulate the economy via this, the biggest problem we're going to have is inflation. Inflation's going to hurt the mum and dads. They're still driving to their jobs. They're still, catching the trains, and they're expensive. We don't have like you here in Queensland where it's 50 cents. You're paying $100 a week to.
Yes, but your trains in New South Wales probably get you places. Up here, unless you live on a train line, you might as well drive because it's pretty useless. But and let's flick over to say the capital gains. Right, this is about a bit more your alley. I mean, what's the issue there? I mean, they're talking about it, and it's not just talking about on property, right?
Yeah, I think the biggest part I can tell you that is it's the change in the goalposts.
Yeah.
We've now said for a long time, this is how capital gains tax works. And we're just in the going, okay, well, this is how it works. This is the approach. This is how we manage the situation. Now we're going back to a different model. We're just going back to an original model by the sound of it.
Which is index,
which is indexation.
Yeah.
And I do think about this. We talk about this industry. I'm old enough that they taught indexation at uni when I was there. 2 years after I left, which was a long time ago, they didn't teach it anymore. So we have a whole bunch of accountants who don't know what indexation is. Look, I think we've got good learning experience, but this capital gains tax reduction, it's probably just a wider thing. It's not just property, it's shares. It's when those mum and dad people who built up their business and then they go sell their business. It's those kind of discounts as well. What we've been talking about is the reduction or removal of this general discount. It's probably going to be interesting to see how it flows on to things like the small business capital gains tax discounts as well, because they're also talking about discounts. So be interesting to see if that gets brought up tonight, or are they just going to leave that as it sits? Not really sure where their opinion is going to sit with that one.
I also dislike how they talk about it. I mean, and you can correct me because you're the pro in the room here, is that, the capital gains tax is essentially a tax on a capital gain. There's not really such a thing as here's a specific tax rate for capital gain, right?
Yeah. And that's the thing. It gets added. Your gain gets added to your taxable income.
That's right. But see, so what happens is they put it out there and it's talked about, we're going to adjust the capital gains tax, right? So everybody who's not really in the know or the experience with that sort of stuff goes, well, that doesn't really affect me. I'm not too, because I don't, I don't do anything enough to even get a tax for capital gains, right? But it does, because it can be everything from shares. It can be anything that you're investing in that goes up in crypto, right? Let's talk about that. No, but but we know that they're after the crypto as well, right? I mean,
100%.
They're on that. But the thing is, when you talk about it as a capital gains tax, it's wrong, right? Yeah. It's a tax on the capital gain that's at your marginal tax rate or whatever entity you push it towards. Let's face it.
Yeah. Right. And that's we always talk about after the discount, the maximum tax you'll pay on a capital gains 23%. Big difference to when we talk about 47% on everything else.
That's right.
But that's because that's the way the discount works.
Yeah.
And we're just in there going, okay, well, that's gone off there. Because it's always the first question. Like, I had a meeting, okay, if my property's worth this, how much tax do I have to pay? It's always the first question we always get asked.
Yeah.
And now that's going to be a different conversation. I think it also translates into when people are going to sell too. Because it's really going to change that mindset. Well, do I sell now in a good market, or do I really just hold on until I hit retirement or a low taxable income year?
Yeah.
Yeah, there is some argument for having this is a capital gains tax. This is a capital gains tax rate.
Yeah.
And going, this is specifically what it is.
But again, going back to the conversation on high net wealth earlier, Steve, is not their strategy to probably not ever sell. Like, I mean, if I'm not saying, okay, not not ever sell, right?
Yeah.
But they would be more financially able to
They can
not
hold out
particularly
for a
worry
long.
about
Yeah.
selling. Whereas a mum and dad on a defined time frame where this is going to fund their retirement have to sell to fund their retirement.
Yeah, 100%. And I think one of the things that gets lost amongst all of this is there seems to be a lot of focus on the first home buyers, which is a silly thing to be doing. Is that about buying boats, or is that actually about looking after the country? And the second thing we've always got to consider is, I think from memory, one of the biggest things the government would love is that everyone pays for their own retirement. Everyone is self-funded. But now you're going to tie their hands behind their back and make it very hard.
Right.
And then you're not going to have enough welfare dollars. It doesn't matter how you do this tax. You're never going to have enough welfare dollars. And we know that because the government also wanted to use superannuation to help buy defence, their new defence $53 billion product, part of the AUKUS stuff that they're doing with the states, but they can't use super to do it, as reported again by The Guardian. So there's a lot of things that we need to focus on. We work in the world of trying to help people fund their retirement, have a comfortable retired and not live on pensions.
That's right.
And in this country, different to you look at the UK system, is that you can work hard. You could do 2 or 3 jobs. You could have never traveled. You could have done nothing. You could have saved every dollar, but we're not going to give you money until you're broke.
Yeah.
Till you get rid of it.
That's
Where
right.
in the UK system, if you've worked hard, we've kept a bit of money, but here's your pension.
That's right. UK
you
pension.
collect it.
Yep.
So it's a different system in this country. And again, if we don't allow the mum and dads to run businesses, use the business tax discounts that are associated to it, go out and buy investment properties or whatever assets they're going to do with the minimal amount of money they have left over with consideration to how cost of living is, we're going to end up with a country where no one can afford anything and everyone's broke.
Yeah, and I really object to a hardworking Aussie being penalised for trying to not be on the pension when they're older.
Yeah,
like
100%.
that really, really ticks me off. So have they actually done figures based on, well, if we allow these things to go or monitor them a certain way or have it maybe not as full on, what happens to the pension if we don't have these things? Like, are more people on it, and what is that going to cost the country? Have we costed that?
More people are definitely going to be on it. That's a problem. When you say, did the government do their numbers, we're not sure if the government's done their numbers. We don't get that privileged information. We just get rumours. I do think back to when Holden was going to close their plant and we had the option to maybe look at it a different way to fund it. Maybe not fund GM itself in America. We could have just fund tax-paying Australians who bought cars. They could have got a $20,000 discount on the car or something like that. Pretty similar to what we're doing now with the tax write-downs for businesses. But they just were focused on that was GM or Holden closing down. They didn't think about all the sub-businesses and the biggest impact that it had on it. And then after it closed and it's all gone away, then suddenly it's like, oh, okay, yeah, it had a bigger effect when we weren't aware of it. So I'm not sure if they're saying when they look at this stuff, is this going to be a bigger effect? And how bad do the mum and dads turn out in 10 years' time when we realise we made a mistake?
Well, that's right. And then what? It's a bit late.
It's too late. You can't, no matter when we talk about investment, we talk about what we're trying to do for people, it's not always about income. It's not always about dollars. It's about time. And it's time is what's going to give you the money to do what you need to do. Time in the market's going to help you grow. Time owning a property is going to help you grow. And if you go and change the rules for a 10-year period and it has a big impact on everyone, then suddenly those people during that 10-year period are the ones that miss out. And then you correct it for the next lot. And it's a problem because we're going to have a lot of people, especially right now, that are going to be in trouble, especially when we have economies and we have wars still going on and a lot of places in the world like the US that's on the brink of a collapse in their economy that may affect ours.
Let's print more. Don't worry about it. Let's print more money. So look, if you've just joined us, we are live. This is our pre-budget preamble that we're going to flick to the budget live at 7:30 when Jim Chalmers jumps up in front of us. And I'm joined with myself at the desk as Steve, financial planner, and Ben, the accountant. If you've got any questions, chuck them in the chat box wherever you see this at the moment. We've also had some comments here that we've got some people hearing and commenting, but we've had someone say there's no audio. So if you can't hear us, put that in the audio box. Don't know why that'd be the case, but yet we've got other people commenting and interacting with us. So that's a bit strange. But we will swap over in about just under 8 minutes. live to the broadcast. We'll sit here and watch with bated breath what Jim is going to come out with. After that, then we'll dig into exactly what he said and we'll break that down for you. And of course, any questions you got, put them in the box. Ben, let's flick to family trusts.
I think this is going to be an interesting part of this budget. I'm 50-50 about whether or not this is just a furphy they've leaked to the press to distract us from CGT and negative gearing. What they've said has they've tried it before. It hasn't worked. It's lost them elections. I have a strong feeling they're not going to get across the line. I think it is, though. What we're going to see is this is going to be this opportunity to restructure. If they do change the rules, accountants always come up with a way of working around it. I think the objective as an accountant is to have a loophole named after you. I think that's the goal. Not a scheme, of course. We don't promote schemes or tax avoidance by any stretch of imagination. But it's just being aware. Now, I think what they're floating with the family trust, a non-refundable 30% tax, it really just shifts the movement from trusts to businesses, like to companies. Now, there are 900,000 family trusts in Australia, not unit trusts, not other trusts, but family trusts. And when you think about, okay, well, there's 25 million of us, well, at least like 5 million of us, if not more, are affected by family trusts.
Yeah.
Now, they're also not a way to avoid tax. They're actually a way to make sure that we're taxed like across a family group. Because you see this in Australia, we have family businesses where everyone's in the business. Sure, mum might be working, dad's supporting, but the kids are involved. Why shouldn't we be allowed to be taxed as a family group? And yes, I see the argument, we're spreading tax. But the days where you could go pay your adult child who's off at uni $120,000 to pay less tax,
it doesn't happen. That's
gone. The ATO went back and read a little bit of legislation and about 3 years ago told us, no, can't do that. You have to justify it.
Yeah.
So I don't see them as this great tax leakage that the government seems to be worried about. And I think it really is going to be changing how we're going to be structuring businesses going forward.
Yeah.
But I think the thing is you've got to look at it is you've got to give the best structure at the time. And they are changing the goalposts. I'll come back to that again.
Yeah, goalpost changing really sucks. But I mean, let's again talk about the average Aussie, right? We got Pauline who owns a fish and chip shop maybe, or, someone else that say the local Indian takeaway. A lot of them, and you would know this from an accounting perspective, rightly or wrongly, a lot of them operate out of a trust as well directly, and if not very much indirectly, but very closely so. Now, I don't understand without what they're essentially saying is, well, you have to pay them wages through another entity to offset what's going through a trust, because otherwise it's catching 30% at the front end of the trust, which I think would be an accounting disaster.
Yeah, I can see it working like if it's a franking credit style where the company company pays tax, you get back as a dividend. The trust pays tax, you get as part of your distribution. But you pay tax on your marginal
see them that. Why would you do that? Like, what's the point of that?
It's just making life harder, I think, is the short answer.
Yeah.
And I think this takes back into one of the lines that was just slipped into one of the press releases, dynamic monthly tax payments for company.
Ooh,
so at the moment, it sounds great. So at the moment, you do your business activity statement once a quarter, and then you have your GST in, your GST out, your pay-as-you-go withholding. And then if you made a profit last year, they get you to prepay next year's tax.
Yeah.
What they're kind of suggesting is, well, this comes off the BAS, and then every month you work out what your profit is, times that by your tax rate, and you give that to the government month by month. And I'm like, you're trying to make business easier. No, you're just making small business harder.
Yeah, that's crap.
I just think you talk about these initiatives to break red tape. Oh, you're writing in red tape. I genuinely hope that doesn't get up, because everyone's going to do is they're going to be paying their accountants more just to do something that they were doing anyway, quarterly or annually.
You would never hope someone to pay you more, though, right?
Look, I think we're going to offer a flat fee for that, but 100%.
But in saying that, I mean, that's the equivalent of saying, okay, you got your business, it runs a 13.5% profit, right? So we'll do the calculation. All right, this is what it is every month you got to pay us. We're just going to take the first 6 cents of every dollar that you get and go to the ATO. Oh, okay, we already do have the GST, but
added one on top.
More.
And look, I think there is this wonderful system. We're moving this whole e-invoice system in Australia and worldwide, where the government get to know all our invoices. I'm not one of these people that we need to hide those invoices. I see it, but I think myself is they're not equipped to deal with the data. The ATO just can't deal with that.
They just use ChatGPT, though.
100%. Well, I always go back to, I don't want to talk about crypto, but crypto is brilliant because it is traceable. 100% of all crypto transactions are traceable.
Yeah.
So the tax office could just trace every transaction. Can they? No.
Right.
But this is just there's that technology gap. There's that information gap where they've got too much, don't know what to do with it.
I think there's a thought gap. You know what I mean? That they think they want to do something, and in reality, it's just completely distant from the reality of what Australians actually live in.
Yeah, 100%. I think, and Scotty, this is a question to you then. Do you think that sitting governments, not just this government, previous sitting governments as well, do you think that they, when they're in power, they try to do everything based around their time in government, and then it's the next person's problem when we get out? It's not talking about nationally and looking at everything as looking after Australia, like when we built the Harbour Bridge and made it massive lanes, then we go and build the M4 and we put 2 lanes each way, then spend the rest of our lives building
they
it.
do not do. I mean, we've all seen the show Utopia, right? No one does any forward planning other than to the next election.
Yeah.
Right? That's all it is. So it is only to keep themselves in power. And really, when you have a government that is only looking at themselves to go to the next 3 or 4 years or whatever each time, then I'm surprised anything gets done. And I'm surprised anything is done in the favour or for the betterment of the country. And of course, because that is the way it works, no one's willing to actually take the hit and say, well, I'm going to make this decision for the betterment of Australia, even though I know I'm going to get voted out because of it next time round.
Well, the oppositions then use that as, hey, look at their budget spending, and you know what they've done, and you know this is then the opposite. This is look how much money we've brought back in. So is it the right way to approach running governments, or you know do we need a national approach to how government should be run, where every dollar that's being spent should be for the country, not just for area elections and stuff? Let's not get too far down there.
We're trying not to get political tonight, right? You know, like this is what we're trying to do. All right, looks like we're pretty close to going live here. So as soon as we see that flick over, we'll shut up and the live stream will start from our source there. But anyway, we're pretty close to Jim getting up. So also, let's leave it on this before we go live. What I know that they do is they throw the net far and wide of the things they want to say. Let's say they want, 10 things. Let's just pull a number. They say they want 10 things. They actually only want 3. Everyone whinges, so they pull it back and they end up with 4, right? That's how it works. It's just always what it goes. They throw the net. They want this, but they throw the net that far because they actually want this. And everyone thinks that they've conceded when really they get what they want at the end of the day. So all this stuff could be waffle. Yeah,
well, they're looking for reaction, aren't they? So they're looking to see what's going to happen. And obviously, everything that we know and everything we look at, we don't know how it's been released. We don't know who's provided the information. No. Has this been a test case to see what the throwback's going to be? I mean, obviously, for some reason they forget that they're recorded when they get elected. So they forget who said what. So I'm sure they're aware of it now, though.
Well, you'd think so, wouldn't you? All right. Well, it looks like Jim's still waiting to get up, so I'm kind of keen to hear what he has to say. And my team will let me know when they go live. One of the things that I heard someone quote, I think it was in coming out of the Corona era, was that there was 2 ways to control the people through interest rates. And that was the actual interest rate adjustment, say upward in this instance. And the other was through the threat of an upward rate interest rate. So they put these things out to the media to say, oh, well, if this doesn't change, we're going to raise interest rates. And they actually get a lot of change of habit by doing that. Not quite as much as an actual interest rate change, but enough to be measurably so. Yeah. And so a lot of this stuff is just hot air.
Do you think that when they do that, besides the panic that happens to the normal mom and dad who's struggling to pay everything they're trying to pay, the high nets are affected by it? Do you think that people have got income, they're going to stop their spending? No. So that's it's an interesting tool. It's an old system. Obviously, it's an old tool, but it's certainly something that's going to be interesting to see what the response is today. And hopefully, when he goes live shortly, we'll be able to get some answers to some of the rumors that are floating around that from both investment side of things and from the tax side of things.
Yeah, indeed. Look, I think that we're looking to go live pretty quick. How are we looking over there, boys? It's not live. Jim's chickened out, guys. So we're just going to deliver our budget.
Well, we can deliver our own budget,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah. So just steady as she goes. And that's the other. Actually, on that note, people like stability, right?
Yeah,
Now,
100%.
if there can be changes and whatever, but realistically, people just want to know parameters, no rules, no law, and work within that because then they don't have to keep changing it, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's what everyone really wants. All right, it looks like they've just gone live now. We're going to flip over to Channel 9, and we'll be back after Jim does his thing, and we'll be back on then.
Treasury's now forecasting inflation to peak around 5% in the middle of the year because of the conflict. For the same reasons, it's expecting growth to come in 0.5 percentage point lower next financial year to be 1.75% overall. In this budget, Treasury also presents a more severe scenario where the oil price peaks at $200 a barrel and takes 3 years to fall back down. We'd still avoid a recession, but unemployment would spike to pre-pandemic levels and inflation would peak above 7%. As Australians, we confront these serious challenges together from a position of strength. We are much better placed and better prepared than most countries to deal with this global crisis. Growth here is still higher than our peers. Real incomes have been growing strongly. Unemployment is historically low, and we have one of the strongest budgets in the world. Before the war, GDP growth was strengthening and broadening. The outlook for business investment remains robust, with a solid pipeline of data centre and renewable energy projects. Employment is still growing, and even if unemployment ticks up as expected, it will still stay around the mid-4s. Nominal wages growth is expected to remain above 3%, and annual real wage growth will return from next year after growing for 8 of the last 9 quarters. Now, we know there's more work to do because the immediate costs and consequences of this war are already serious and they could be severe. At the same time, our economy is being reshaped by structural shifts across energy, industry, technology, demography, and geopolitics. And we have long-standing challenges when it comes to our productivity performance, our housing market, and our tax system. This budget is about getting us through the global oil shock and taking pressure off Australians while building a stronger economy, a better tax system, a more sustainable budget, and lifting living standards for our people. Speaker, we are responding to the biggest oil shock in history with a comprehensive $14.8 billion plan to secure more fuel, strengthen our supply chains, build resilience, and take the sting out of prices. Yeah. The Strengthening Australia's Fuel Resilience Package will deliver more fuel for drivers and industry, more fertiliser for farmers, and more fuel security for our economy. Its centrepiece is a $10 billion investment in immediate fuel supplies and a permanent Australian fuel security reserve to get the fuels and fertiliser that we need. Yeah. We're helping businesses and manufacturers bolster supply chains with $1 billion in interest-free loans through the National Reconstruction Fund and incentives to get more freight moving on trains and ships. Targeted support for electric vehicles, building more charging stations and heavy vehicle reform are all investments in our long-term fuel resilience. We'll produce more fuel through our $1.1 billion Cleaner Fuels program, backed with reforms to our low-carbon liquid fuels market to support demand. We're reserving 20% of gas exports for Australian users, so there's more supply at lower prices. Yeah. And we're making more progress on our Future Made in Australia agenda, supporting mining and processing through our Critical Minerals Strategic Reserve and investments in domestic smelting and manufacturing. Speaker, we understand that this crisis is adding to the cost of living pressures facing Australians. And that's why we are taking some of the sting out of global price rises by more than halving the fuel excise, reducing the heavy vehicle road user charge to zero, putting petrol companies on notice by doubling the consumer watchdog's maximum penalties and ramping up enforcement and monitoring, giving businesses a bit more leeway at tax time if they're facing fuel supply problems, and continuing to make it easier and quicker for small businesses to get access to credit if they need it. Speaker, immediate relief from the fuel crisis is coupled with lasting and responsible cost of living measures. This government cut taxes 2 years ago. We're cutting them again this year and next year too. Tonight, we're proud to be delivering another round of ongoing tax cuts for Australian workers. Yeah. We will put more money into the pockets of 13.3 million workers with a new $250 Working Australians tax offset. Yeah. It will begin from the second half of 2027 and be paid each year after that, ongoing and automatically, in your tax return, just like the instant deduction that we are rolling out as well. This offset is targeted to workers and it represents the most meaningful permanent increase to the effective tax-free threshold since Labor increased it more than a decade ago. Yeah. Altogether, our 5 different tax cuts will benefit the average worker by up to $2,816 in 2028. Averaged out over the year, our 3 tax cuts, our instant deduction and the new offset are the equivalent of up to $54 back in the average earner's pocket each week. Now, the $6.4 billion tax offset is the biggest cost of living measure in this budget, but it's not all we're doing to support families under pressure. As a Labor government, we will always invest in Medicare and cheaper medicines and public health so Australians get the care that they need and when they need it. This budget includes another $25 billion for public hospitals. We're also investing $5.9 billion to list more medicines on the Pharmaceutical Benefit Scheme, so Australians continue to access life-changing medicines at cheaper prices. One example is cutting the cost of treatment for cystic fibrosis will save some Australians around $250,000 a year. Medicare urgent care clinics reduce out-of-pocket costs because more bulk billing means less pressure on household budgets and emergency departments. By July, 4 in 5 Australians will live within a 20-minute drive of one of the 137 clinics around the country. Yeah. We're permanently funding every one of them with $1.8 billion over the next 4 years and about $500 million every year after that. Yeah. Speaker, Australia's long-standing housing shortage is making homes unaffordable. This challenge hits young workers and families hard, and we're addressing it from every responsible angle. The reforms in this budget will lift our total investment in housing to a record $47 billion. We're levelling the playing field for first home buyers with 5% deposits and tax reform to help more young Australians into their own home. We'll invest another $2 billion in the power, roads and drains that we need for new housing developments, which will help around 65,000 new homes over the next decade. We're working with the states to cut red tape and planning delays, which could unlock tens of thousands more. We're extending our ban on foreign investors buying existing homes to take pressure off the market and helping to fix the youth housing penalty to secure homes for 4,000 young people at risk of homelessness. Yeah. Speaker, these housing reforms go to the very core of our budget strategy, dealing with the very real pressures on people right now while taking responsibility for the challenges facing the next generations. The shocks from around the world are coming at us faster and more frequently. And that global uncertainty is not a reason to delay reform. It's why we must move with urgency and with ambition. The challenges coming at us, the opportunities ahead of us, and the better future that Australians deserve will not wait for a time when all is quiet in the world. That's why this budget invests in resilience and reform to grow our economy the right way and lift living standards over time. We'll do that through 3 ambitious policy packages: a productivity and investment package, a tax reform package, and a savings package as well. Because, Speaker, to lift wages and living standards, we have to lift productivity. In the market sector, productivity has now grown for 5 consecutive quarters, was 1.5% last year. But this budget is about going further and moving faster. This productivity package will help us attract and absorb more investment, make it easier and quicker to build, and it will slash compliance costs. The reforms we are announcing tonight will cut regulatory costs by $10.2 billion every year. Our efforts in national competition policy alone could boost GDP by $13 billion a year. This is the broadest productivity push in a budget since the 1990s. Speaker, our productivity plan starts with incentivising investment and innovation through the tax system for businesses, startups and venture capital. We're cutting the unnecessary red tape holding us back, including $780 million every year in the financial sector alone. We're also making tax time simpler for small businesses, which will save them 376,000 hours a year. We're getting rid of almost 600 more tariffs to reduce trade barriers, as well as expanding our trusted trader program and streamlining biosecurity for fertiliser imports. We're also building a single national market through our national competition policy reforms. So Australia works as one economy, not 8, with new work to make mandatory standards free for workers and businesses. And we're making government simpler to deal with through a tell us once approach so Australians don't have to keep submitting the same information, and expanding the digital ID. We will speed up approvals so businesses can move quickly from an investment decision to shovels in the ground. That's the motivation behind our environmental law reforms, the investor front door and a second round of foreign investment changes. We'll also simplify building regulations for when these projects begin construction. And we're doing more on skills recognition and education so tradies can get their qualifications recognised more easily and businesses can find the skilled workers that they need. We're progressing the most significant reforms to the national electricity market since the 1990s as the world moves to net zero, including changes to help attract more investment in renewable energy and increase competition. We're also modernising our energy system with a domestic gas reservation and getting more solar and batteries into homes, which could save $7 billion in systems costs by 2050. We're seizing the vast opportunities from AI with grants to commercialise AI innovations and making government more efficient. We're investing billions more in science and innovation through the Medical Research Future Fund and in the CSIRO and the Square Kilometre Array, and billions in the infrastructure that we need to get people to work and to improve our regions, towns and cities. We're also strengthening the performance test, so our $4.5 trillion super sector isn't being discouraged from investing productive capital in areas like energy and housing. Speaker, the productivity package is ambitious and so are our tax reforms. This budget includes the most significant tax reform package in more than a quarter of a century. This is about tax relief and tax reform to make our economy work for more Australians, for more businesses and future generations. We're delivering a fairer tax system for workers, first-time buyers and young people. This will help rebalance a system which is more generous to assets than it is to labour, and help rebalance a system where house prices have decoupled from incomes. Since 1999, house prices have risen over 400%, more than twice as fast as average incomes. Our tax changes will help about 75,000 Australians achieve the dream of home ownership. We'll limit negative gearing for residential property to new builds from July next year. And we're replacing the 50% capital gains tax discount with inflation-adjusted indexation to restore the taxation of real gains. These changes will be prospective, and new builds will retain the option to use the 50% discount. We'll also introduce a minimum 30% tax rate on capital gains from July next year and on discretionary trust from July the year after. This is about better aligning the taxes paid on these types of income with the taxes paid on wages. These changes will level the playing field for workers and first home buyers and support investment in productive assets, including new housing supply. And they will fund our new round of tax relief for more than 13 million Australian workers. So, Speaker, we're building a better tax system for businesses too, with over $3.5 billion in new measures that lower taxes to encourage investment and innovation. We'll permanently introduce 2-year loss carryback for all companies up to $1 billion in turnover, bolstering resilience and risk-taking. And we'll introduce loss refundability for startups to help new businesses invest and grow in their first 2 years. We'll also expand tax incentives for venture capital and better target the research and development tax incentive to support more high-impact innovation. The third part of our tax reform package is to make the tax system simpler and more sustainable. Simpler for workers with a $1,000 instant deduction, and simpler for small businesses with a permanent instant asset write-off and more dynamic tax instalments. And we'll put in place more sustainable long-term settings to support the take-up of electric vehicles. Speaker, our tax reforms will help workers, create a fairer housing market and drive more productive investment across our economy. They build on the significant reforms we've already delivered, and they complement our other efforts to increase housing supply and boost productivity and reduce compliance costs. The new revenue raised will be returned to workers and businesses over the next 4 years so that more Australians can earn more and keep more of what they earn. Yeah. So, Speaker, this means the heavy lifting on budget repair is being done by savings and spending restraint, not tax increases. This budget delivers the largest savings package on record. All up, there are $63.8 billion in savings. Our decisions improve the budget in net terms by $26.1 billion once you take our responsible provisions into account. A big part of our savings package will restore the NDIS to its original intent and secure its future so it grows in a sustainable way in line with programs like Medicare. This difficult but necessary reform will save $37.8 billion over the forward estimates. On top of savings, there's also very substantial spending restraint. Real spending growth averages just 1.5% for the 8 years to June 2030. This is the lowest average growth rate in any 8-year period for almost 3.5 decades and less than half the 30-year average. As a result of all of this, we've returned every single dollar of revenue upgrades to the bottom line for the second consecutive update. Payments as a share of the economy are forecast to go down from 26.8% next year to 26.2% by the middle of 2030. Now, this responsible economic management means that the budget deficit next financial year is $2.8 billion lower at $31.5 billion. The bottom line is better in every year over the forward estimates and the medium term. The budget position has improved by $44.9 billion, and this makes it more than $250 billion better than when we came to office. Yeah. Gross debt will be $982 billion at the end of this financial year, and it peaks lower, it peaks earlier, and is lower in every year for the next 11 years. And this means, in share of economy terms, gross and net debt remain well below what we inherited in every year going forward. Yeah. Debt is lower and the budget position is stronger in every year of the medium term because of our savings. The medium-term budget position is much stronger and more sustainable as a consequence, creating more room for future tax relief. Speaker, we've made progress getting the budget in much better shape at the same time as we've found room to fund the services and the security that Australians rely on. This budget includes record investments in healthcare, defence and economic resilience. There's $3 billion to deliver more beds, more packages and better aged care for older Australians. $2 billion for the Thriving Kids program and a $3 billion provision for other foundational supports outside the NDIS. And $2.2 billion to strengthen Services Australia and ensure that Australians continue to receive safe, secure and reliable services quickly and easily. Speaker, we're building an economy which is stronger and fairer and gives more Australians a stake in our success. We're investing an extra $1.2 billion to close the gap, doubling the number of jobs created as part of the Remote Jobs and Economic Development program, improving housing quality and expanding our support for grocery stores in remote First Nations communities. Speaker, the gender pay gap has never been narrower and women's workforce participation hit record highs last year. We're proud to have backed $21 billion in wage rises for women working in sectors like aged care and early childhood education, which have been undervalued for too long. Yeah. Since 2022, we've also invested more than $4.4 billion to deliver the National Plan to End Violence Against Women and Children. And this budget includes hundreds of millions of dollars for frontline services and to make our child support system safer so children get this financial support that they need and women are protected from abuse. Speaker, economic security, economic resilience and national security are now one and the same. We're investing an additional $53 billion over the next decade in our Defence Force to keep Australians and our region safe. And there's almost $800 million for veterans as part of our response to the Royal Commission into Defence and Veteran Suicide. We're also taking action to strengthen our national security and our national unity since the devastating anti-Semitic terror attack at Bondi Beach. We're adopting every recommendation from the Royal Commission on Anti-Semitism and Social Cohesion's interim report, and we're fast-tracking tougher gun laws through the National Cabinet. There is $600 million in this budget for a new counter-terrorism online centre, grants to support affected communities, and money for our law enforcement agencies to crack down on the hate speech, the violent extremism, and the terrorism, which has absolutely no place in this country. So, Speaker, against a backdrop of global uncertainty, this budget invests in Australia's resilience, its economic sovereignty, and its national security. And at a time when Australians are under pressure, this budget delivers more help with the cost of living and new tax cuts for workers. And in an era where people feel like the system no longer works for them, this budget doesn't just acknowledge that, it acts on it. By levelling the playing field for first home buyers, backing the aspiration and innovation of small businesses, and renewing that fundamental bargain between generations to help bring the dream of home ownership within reach of more young Australians. No other budget in the 2000s has set out this much responsible budget repair and this much economic reform. These are difficult decisions to ensure a stronger bottom line every year, to give us greater insurance in uncertain times, at the same time as we build a more resilient, more productive and competitive economy. This is a strategy which helps shield people from the harshest consequences of a global oil crisis, stabilises our economy and our budget at a time of extreme uncertainty and volatility in the world, and strengthens Australia for the next shock. Faced with a choice between resilience or reform, this budget demonstrates that our government and our country are capable of both. Tonight we choose the hard road of reform, not the path of least resistance, by responding to the pressures that Australians confront today and fulfilling our obligations and our responsibilities to the generations to come. And that, Mr. Speaker, is why I commend this bill and this budget to the House.
Get rid of Jim. Can you make me bigger? How do you make me big again? There we go. We got sound again. All right, we're back on. All right, thanks for joining us. Look, I know you really wanted to keep watching Jim, but you got myself, Scotty, Steve, financial planner, and Ben, the accountant, instead. So sorry about that. And in fact, if you joined us just now after the budget, well, we're just going to tell you everything that was in there, what's important to you anyway. And I've got these two gentlemen with me because they're actually they love these things. They're nerds. So they've got their own little nerds. But you got your own packet of nerds there, and Steve, your own nerds packet over there. Because you've got a financial planning nerd and accounting nerd. So let's kick off with some questions. If you've got them, chuck them in the chat boxes wherever you are, especially on YouTube. Come straight up here and we'll be able to answer them. But, well,
we got a standing ovation, mate. He's done well.
From his own team.
Ovation.
Well, the people standing behind him.
It's like, okay, cool. Who wants to go first? I see you madly writing notes the whole time.
I think it's stacks. I think that's... Because I'm just going to gripe about everything's about first home buyers, and I don't begrudge first home buyers, but there's a lot of people who lost homes during COVID who want to buy houses, they don't qualify. We're not addressing any of that. What we're just saying is new voters, first home buyers, we'll help you.
But they've already said that.
To set up multiple times
But-
through the project.
But they've already got that situation in play with the 5% down and all that sort of
But
stuff.
they haven't reminded everyone enough.
Oh, they haven't. But then now we're reminded
We're
tonight.
reminding
Oh, okay,
everyone that
sorry.
that's what we're doing.
Sorry. Okay. All right. Well, so your take is mainly focused on first homeowners and what
Well,
else?
there's not. If you and if you buy an EV, which the world is going that way, there's supplementary aids available for that. But if you're a normal car driver, you're still paying fuel, you're still paying taxes. There's no tax break for you.
Yeah.
So when we look at the meat of mum and dads who are in the middle of their life, as we spoke about prior to the announcements, I don't see any improvement for those guys.
No, I don't. I don't either.
Oh, look, my big take out of it was a budget of contradictions. He just sat there and said, oh, we're saving money by reducing spending, and no one's getting paid more. 2 seconds after he just delivered the 3 lines about tax increases.
Yeah.
I'm like, so no one's paying more. We're reducing taxes, but we're funding everything by increasing taxes.
It's a load of crap.
I was like, this is a bad marketing example.
Yeah.
Because the other one, he stated right at the very beginning, 5% inflation. Well, that's great, but 3% real wage growth.
Yeah. Well, so they're losing.
Yeah, so
2%
everyone
down.
is buying power is going back by 2% every year.
Yeah.
So cost of living, you didn't fix anything. You made it worse. Like everyone is getting poorer by 2% every year. It doesn't matter if you got a pay rise. Unless you've got a 5% pay rise, you're not breaking even.
Yeah, that's right.
And I just think that it's a bunch of contradictions, big flashy numbers, $14.8 billion to buy some fuel. I think it was $1 billion for the national, I think it was recovery tracks and things like that, where they're talking about transporting through Australia. Like, did they not just cancel the Inland Railway last week?
Yes, they just.
So I'm like,
yes.
we're going to give $1 billion to support rail that we just cancelled?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
And didn't we have our own fuel system until they said we shouldn't store fuel here anymore? We'll let the US carry it all for us.
Yeah.
And so,
Well, it's explosive, Steve. You don't want to be around that dangerous stuff.
no.
catches fire.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
especially in
Yeah.
America.
So
So-
I think there's a lot of talk about like distraction from the big things. And look, from my point of view, tax is my focus. 3 lines. And it took him well and truly 2/3 of the way through the talk to whip them out and then say, oh, we're not increasing taxes. Well, no, you are.
Yeah.
Well, you're increasing the way we tax, which will get you more revenue, which means we pay more. So, yeah.
And I
not
also
bad.
can't remember, Scotty, you'll know this. Didn't the government announce that they were sacking a whole lot of people that were over $120,000 incomes to reduce their expenditure?
They're always doing something to reduce expenditure, and then they go the next week and hire a bunch of other people.
Well, there's a hiring freeze, and it's like 28,000 positions need to be let go from federal government.
Right.
You're like, how did you hire 28,000 people? What are they all doing?
Yeah.
I'll tell you honestly, they're not at the tax office answering the phone.
No, they're not. Or
Um,
any other services.
yeah,
that we
government
want.
services.
Well, we're going to reinforce Services Australia,
Yeah.
which is great. So you're about to ring them now and still not get anyone.
Well,
Um,
but the problem with that sort of stuff when they let go of people is it always happens. They let them go, then there's a lack. So then they go out to external contractors. Those people kind of just go and work for external contractors, kind of getting the same job, but just paid by ABC contracting code
Well,
instead of government.
affects their super, affects a
It
lot of
does,
things.
but then the government pays huge amounts to the external contractors to do the same
doesn't
job.
count on their books, though.
No, it doesn't, and that's what they're talking about.
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the things we talked about during the broadcast was the fact that the government's talked about was 65,000 homes over
Yeah.
a 10-year period, so 6,500 homes per year. I mean, I think we drove past more than that being developed now. So they're not really helping the housing crisis because they're not
Well-
producing. They would need to put 100,000 homes yearly into the market
Well, I
to
thought we
equalize
needed
this.
120 or something.
Yeah, 120,000 we're behind,
Yeah.
and they didn't talk about immigration.
No,
So
not
they
a
didn't talk
single
about
thing
the immigration side of things and how many
Pretty
people
funny,
coming in taking up those spaces.
Yeah.
Well, they're talking about like there's going to be 75,000 new people buying houses. And then they're talking about only 65,000 houses. Like, it doesn't take a genius to work out there's a shortfall. Like, look,
There's
I
a
have a commerce
shortfall.
degree, but I can definitely do 75,000 at 65,000.
And they
Yeah,
talked
it's
about
still
they had
short.
4,000. They're talking about 4,000 homeless young people. Now, I mean, I hope there's not more than that. I mean, it's a horrible thing, but
Well, that's
how did-
registered.
How do they
homeless.
get that number? And what if you're 4,001? Do you know what I mean? Like, what I don't understand how that's going to work. So the problem with this stuff is there's a lot of just headlines put into a speech to go whatever. Some of the big ones, though, I mean, they said it was 3 stages or 3 things they focus on: tax, productivity, and savings. Savings just means they're skimping on things. Like, that's what savings is when it
Well,
comes to government.
so savings on the things we believe, again, we get back to mum and dads,
Yeah.
and the tax consideration breaks, but $53 billion to go out and buy new military. So, you know, I think we're registered, Australia's registered as the safest place on the earth if there's a nuclear war. So I'm not sure, maybe we could peel that back by 10 billion and put that into the kids who are homeless and do a lot of things. So I think they're not really saving money the way that I think everybody as a society would like. They're spending money where they think we want to hear it, which is defense, safety, and military.
Yeah, I think so. I think that. Okay, so let's look here. The negative gearing one was interesting. So they are going to bring in the negative gearing, whatever the changes they're looking at, but you could still choose that on. You still got it on new builds, right?
So the summary is existing arrangements will be unchanged for all properties held before budget night.
Yeah.
So anyone who exchanged today, good on you.
before
Or
7:30.
before, that's great. But then it's investors who establish a new building. Don't know what the definition of that's going to be. From the 1st of July 2027 will be entitled to negative gearing.
So what happens between now and then?
That's a very good question, because actually this is a recurring thing that normally when we see budgets, things happen at 7:30. The moment Jim
that's
Comes
what's announced
happens,
at
the
7:30,
rules change at 7:30, right?
Yeah.
A couple of years ago, and I imagine will happen probably not this year, but we ran through a period where the budget was never actually released in May, was never approved till September, October, November. So you have all these accountants out there doing tax returns in July to October on rules that don't exist. Oh, we think these are the rules. So most budgets always 7:30 budget night. This is all 1st of July 2027. Negative gearing. Capital gains is also 1st of July 2027. I lost with the family trust election, the family trust taxes. But that's also 1st of July 2027.
Yeah.
So it's why we make these changes in the future. Normally a government would delay making choices if they don't expect to be in power. But correct me if I'm wrong, the election's 2028. That's after 2027. So that's got me what the delay is.
I'm not sure on that. And let's talk about, so the capital gains. I just saw a cheat sheet here, and it's talking about, it's even got rid of the pre-1985 stuff here.
That's interesting. Well, I didn't see that one.
Yeah, so just so we know, if it's pre-1985, they're on different rules. What was the
So
rules
capital
there?
gains tax got brought in September 1983 for a 1985 date.
Yeah.
And so if you acquired a property before this date, it predates capital gains tax altogether. Now, it does happen from time to time. I had a client do one recently, but you find those pre-CGT assets are more things like the beach houses down the Mornington Peninsula that were owned by mum and dad or granddad. They got transferred to them in the 70s and the 80s. They don't really exist anymore, but they are, to be honest, they are those high value properties that have been in families for years and years and years. Farmland's also an interesting one as well.
Yeah,
So,
well, I think they've kind of carved that out a little bit here. So on that 1985 stuff, they're saying here that Australians sitting on those decade-old assets must now pay tax on gains made after July 1st. So only the gains made after July 1st.
yeah, which is always an interesting. So when you do capital gain, if you own a property you have that is that has been a principal place residency and an investment property, there's a couple of different ways you can choose capital gains tax. And one of those ones is, if it starts off as your home, when you move out, you can get a market valuation and then you only pay tax from that point forward. This seems to be like a version of that, where we're all going to have to run around and value our properties on the 1st of July 2027. And then essentially we have our tax from that point forward, because it kind of also implies that that the tax up to that date, we could still potentially apply the 50% discount.
Yeah.
So the short blurb I've got is, it's kind of confusing. I think it's the short answer. They're trying their best to make it as simple as possible. But it's up until the 1st of July 2027, you're still entitled to a 50% discount. The gain beyond that will be indexed. So, well, great, you're going to go to your accountant. I've sold this property. There's going to be a big spreadsheet of calculations to work out what you actually owe, and then to turn around and say a minimum 30% tax on it.
Yeah.
So, okay, so if if you, let's say you had $20,000 of BHP shares you bought on the 1st of July last year, you sold them now, they've gone up to 35,000. You're a pensioner, that's a $15,000 gain, no discount. Normally you wouldn't attract any tax because you're below the tax-free threshold.
Yeah.
If there's now a minimum 30% tax on that gain,
Yeah.
well, these pensioners who we're trying to support and we're trying to love are worse off.
They're getting screwed.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's talk negative gearing. I'm looking here and it's like, okay, new builds only. So, I mean, I
don't have a problem with the new
I
builds.
kind of get
They
that.
could have done that in 2014
Yeah.
and made the market be stronger, but they just went after SMSF and investors
That's right.
and made it difficult.
So I get that. I get, because that is an incentive to go there and build new property and whatever. So I get that. So the thing is, I want to know how it works though, because it's saying that you can only limited to new builds, right?
From 1st of July
from 1st
2027
to 27.
again.
Okay, all right. So
14 months down the road.
but what does that do? So, however, investors who buy an established home will still be able to deduct losses against residential property income.
Yeah, so I think that's actually a really interesting
So
point.
not your personal income.
So it won't come off your personal. So you are negative. So at the moment you're negative gear by about $10,000.
Yeah.
You're paying top marginal tax rate. You'd get $4,700 back in tax.
Right.
So it sounds like it's going to be quarantined into that.
Well, it is. So
property.
it's saying they're going to be able to carry forward the losses to future years to deduct against residential property income.
So that hopefully when you've paid off that mortgage and now the property's positively geared.
I guess so.
Okay.
But
So-
what if you sell it? Can you take it off the capital gain?
So the theory was that if it was going to be credited once you make the sale against any CGT that's there, one of the qualms or questions that are out there is that if you have a self-managed super fund and retire at 60 and have a property asset in there, you might have had it for 20 years, for example, and retire at 60, the CGT component is removed. Now, if you're not getting tax credit or your fund's not getting the tax credit, then you're not getting anything.
Well, there's an interesting question. A 30% minimum tax on capital gains. How does it affect self-managed super funds?
Well, aren't they're supposed to not be that tax rate, right?
Well, a self-managed super fund is 15%.
That's right.
If it's in pension phase, it's 0.
That's right.
But if the capital gain has a minimum tax of 30%, are all these self-managed super funds all of a sudden going to pay 30% tax on their gains? But and if it's not just
well,
property,
no one
it's-
here's
No
going to be able to
one's-
answer
no,
that
no,
question.
no.
It's like,
I
well,
don't think there's
they know
anyone
how
we
to
can
do it.
bring.
I don't
yeah.
think anyone in Parliament could answer either.
No.
It's
But
yeah,
that's
yeah.
because there's that. So where do the laws cross over? Is it exempt current pension income? Does that apply the 0 rate? Does the exemption there? That's going to be a D one, because my thoughts were, okay, well, this capital gains discount's going to push more investments to self-managed super funds because you get that 0% tax in retirement phase. But if these two laws contradict each other, where do we sit? And self-managed super funds are all investments.
Yeah.
There's
Of
not
course
any
they
no
are. Well, what is
investments.
it? That's right.
Super funds are no different to super. I mean, they're just tax structures.
Yeah.
And objective of everyone super, when it was introduced, was that people would have funds to retire. That's the whole objective of the process. And then if we're really attacking that retirement process, we get back to our argument that we talked about, which is, isn't the whole objective is about people looking after themselves and not being a cost to the government?
That's right.
And I think if they're going to make these changes, they need to have consideration to what is the long-term impact, not this government, not next government, but 20 years down the track, 30 years down the track, what is that impact? And then, of course, when you talk about, new builds, again, I don't have a problem with the rule. I actually think it's a good rule. But you get back to the problem with, people have got existing bills. When you go to auction, there's no investors at the auction because the investor either has to buy it because it serves a purpose or whatever, but they're not going to buy it because there's no tax credit associated with it.
Yeah, so in a
there has to be an
balanced area,
advantage.
so let's explain that to people. In a balanced area, so a suburb where, say, it's 40% investors and 60% owner occupiers. What we used to look at was you'd always want to be in an area that was fairly balanced like that. So when you could come to sell, you could access the whole market. What you're saying is that we're actually manufacturing a reduced market for sale because you can only sell to non-investors.
Yeah.
You can't, but you're really only going to sell to non-investors. Investors aren't going to buy it.
Well, look at Sydney. I mean, if you look at any of the older suburbs and leafy suburbs around Sydney, their existing buildings have been there forever.
Yeah.
Suddenly those auctions have less investors in them, then suddenly you drive down the value of the market. Now, we're trying to cool the market, don't get me wrong. But I get back to the argument that, new builds is great. Yep, we're shortfall. 65,000 homes over 10 years is ridiculous. There's nowhere near enough homes. stop allowing developers, when government sells land off to developers, to dictate how they sell the land. The government should have a rule over it. If you're going to put 20,000 homes in there, it should be in lots of 5,000, 10,000 homes. Get them to the market so that it's a bit more competitive. But as soon as that estate's built, let's remember, this house is built, investors buy in it. Some period down the track, that estate will never have another investor in it eventually.
Yeah.
Because they'll all be sold and then they don't qualify.
That's right.
So you're basically moving investors further and further outwards or up the coast because they can't buy in this area down there. So you're going to have effect on, again, mum and dads, and the kids who are 10 today are going to be 20 by the time they build these 65,000.
So let's extrapolate that through, because I think that's a really interesting point. What you're actually saying is, because investors aren't in that area, then let's talk in what actually affects mums and dads. Then renters aren't in that area, right? Which is, renting used to be, it's not on the nose. It's not a bad thing to rent.
No.
It can actually be a very viable strategy
Yep, certainly.
in terms of wealth creation, what have you, right?
Yeah, 100%.
But these people are being penalized in one sense because they have to be in an area that is owned by an investor, and an investor is only going to own an area where it's new, and new areas are usually out of town.
Yeah.
So now all renters are out of town.
Yeah, which is one of the things we say with clients. We have some views about how people should buy, and when we're dealing with clients whose children are about to buy property and they talk about 5% deposits, we say if you don't have 30 or 40% deposit, you shouldn't be buying a house to live in. Rent where you need to work, invest where you need to make money. And so, if no one wants to travel 2 hours in traffic every day to work, cost effectively,
that's where renters are going to be pushed.
But that's where renters are going to be pushed.
Because that's where the stock is that investors are going to own.
And you could change all these rules. You're not putting more money in anyone's pocket. The guy who's $400,000 or $300,000 or $200,000 short to buy a property tomorrow as a first-time buyer, all these rules I talked about today, none of that changes anything.
No.
That's not putting more money in their pockets. All you've done is create a long-term problem, and that is you're moving everyone out of town.
That's a problem. All right, so let's go to your favourite one, Ben. Family trusts.
Family trusts, 30% tax paid by the trustee for any distributions to the beneficiaries, which is non-refundable, which is an interesting thing. So essentially, your trust makes $100,000 income. It pays $30,000 in tax, then distributes to the individuals. Maybe they're showing the $70,000 that's left over, then they pay tax on it again. Now, if that's someone paying top marginal tax rate, they're paying 45% and 30% tax on their
So they don't
trust
get
income.
a credit then.
It's looking like they don't get a credit.
They'd have to get a credit. I just don't know if they're going to get a refund.
Well, so
surely.
the line is, and I just saw this line here, was the question was put, beneficiaries other than corporate beneficiaries will receive a non-refundable credit. So non-refundable would mean that you can use it to offset your tax, but you don't get it back if you pay. So if you only get, say, $18,000 of distributions, you would normally get, in a dividend, you would get the franking credits back. But they're saying a trust, well, you won't get those back. They're lost. So essentially it sets a minimum tax level on trust income. So really what you want to do is 45,000 is where the tax bracket changes to 30 cents for individuals.
Yeah.
So your minimum trust distribution to any individuals is going to be around that 60 or 70% to break even.
70,000.
Yeah, $70,000.
So I've got a question for you. What happens if a trust receives a franked dividend?
I would imagine the franked dividend would still flow through, because the question that they put is, the suggestion that one of the groups I saw was, so beneficiaries other than companies get non-refundables. That means companies get a refundable credit. So
you just process it through a company.
Yeah,
right?
100% of your trust distribution drops from your trust to your corporate beneficiary, which then has different classes of shares, pays out a dividend, franking credits are refundable. I kind of feel like that the budget's now less than 50 minutes old and the accountants have already come up with a solution.
I think it's just
I think we will name the loophole after that person. I think congratulations. But I love it. 50 minutes since, less than 50 minutes since Jim Chalmers got up there and said, these are the new rules. The loopholes have already turned up online. So
on the fact that it's new rules, things like that's a fairly major change, because there's other legislation that talks about double taxation and stuff like that within entities and stuff.
Yeah.
So do they have to get this across? Like, does this have to be voted through, or is this just a rubber stamp? It's ready to go.
Well, I don't want to say it is rubber stamp, but what this has to do is all bills in Parliament must follow the parliamentary process. So This is the first reading of it.
Yeah.
They will then introduce the legislation that supports this. Labor holds the majority. If they can't get it through, they've got some serious issues, then it has to go to the Senate. Should get through the Senate because they hold the majority there. I can't see how what they want won't be passed unless Labor backbenchers revolt.
Right.
I don't see them doing that either. So I don't want to say it is rubber stamped, but it's rubber stamped. So
All right. So, and on the trust thing, my notes here said that they had quite a lengthy time to restructure.
yeah, so it looks like it's coming out to be that this will kick in from the 1st of July 2027.
Yeah.
And what they're saying there is that we're looking at a way of, I think they're trying to get rid of trust essentially in this kind of
Sounds like
structure.
it.
There will be some concessions allowed to allow some probably some capital gains tax rollover reliefs to move your investments through from a trust through to another company or
That's
some
a
sort of.
huge, like it says here, small business and other taxpayers be given 3 years from July 1, 2027 to restructure out of discretionary trusts into companies or fixed trusts.
Well, that's great because Labor should be out of power by then.
That's right. I hope it'd
Um,
be undone.
and hopefully Pauline Hanson, maybe who's going to be the next
Yeah,
government, might get across the line.
I mean,
Um,
that's like, you know, and it says the minimum tax won't apply to super funds and other fixed trusts, deceased estates. So,
Well, so it's really just family trusts. So we're not
Yeah.
talking unit trusts, which are used for styles of investments.
sure, but they're predetermined, right?
They're predetermined, but they still achieve the same sort of
What
outcomes.
about to test testamentary trusts?
Well,
That's
testamentary
a deceased
trusts.
estate or what?
Yeah, so testamentary trust essentially is where you die with assets
Yeah.
and you want to pass them through to a minor, but you don't want them to have control of those assets until certain conditions.
But it can
met.
still be discretionary by the trustee, can't it?
Well, no, it still has to follow the will. So
Yeah.
it has to say if it says these two people are entitled to it, it generally gives a fixed entitlement to it.
Right, okay.
The advantage of those is if you distribute to a minor, normally you would pay minor tax rates, which are top marginal tax rate over $400.
Sure.
But what testamentary trust allows you to do is to pay adult tax rates on the income. So it's a bit of a savings.
But that's a big issue, I think, of trust. As I said earlier in our preamble, that you know, a lot of businesses, like family businesses, are run out of trusts.
100%,
You know, and it's family trusts, and so they now have to structure out of that.
Well, or get smart about how you're doing it. So just spitballing ideas. What you would normally do is a trust is the child who's over 18 to satisfy Section 100A. You would distribute them what it costs them to live at home kind of approach. Now, that would maybe be $800 a week or $1,000 a week. So it's below that. So it's about $30,000, $40,000 is the trust distribution. Now, if there's a flat 30% tax rate, there is an advantage, but not the advantage that was there. So what you just need now to change is you potentially would pay them a market wage out of the business, which is 30 or 40,000. You get that lower tax rate. Yes, you pay super for them. You get the deduction, but you're saving tax. So there's already ways to do it.
But let me get this straight. How do you can't? Can you still pay a wage out of the trust?
Wages can still pay trust because wages
Because
are just
it's not a distribution, right?
Yeah, so you have to go through the whole process of wages, payroll,
Yeah.
superannuation, but you can still do it.
Yeah.
And I think it's more work. And I think it's one of the comments from the ABC was they do their winners and losers of the budget every year, and I think their number one winner is accountants. To be
Yeah,
honest,
yeah,
I reckon
The
so.
costs
I read
associated
that.
with everything is going to be crazy. And
Yeah.
if you think about where they're going to go after properties and they want valuations done, the guys who work in that market are going to be laughing at
Yeah.
because there's going to be so many valuations. It can't be your opinion. It has to be a valuer that goes and does it. Well, $400, $500, $700, depending on the valuer,
That's good
every
price
time for
value.
every property. So there's a lot of expenses.
Yeah.
And on the thing you guys are talking about it, either I missed it because we're still objecting to what they're talking about. The inheritance tax. The big talked about. They didn't mention it.
Yeah.
I didn't see anything here on that.
Because obviously, that's another concern. And with no cash being available in this day and age, people would be cashing down and giving the money to the kids as their own money. Obviously, out of super, they can't gift it because it's $10,000 over 3 years. But out of their personal savings, they can give a whole chunk. But I didn't see or hear anything about the inheritance tax. So,
No, I didn't see anything about that either.
no.
It says here, loser is old Australians.
Yeah. So
So-
a reduction of the amount that they're going to pay towards their private health insurance.
Yeah.
Which I always thought, well, hang on, you're going to put more people back into the public system. Now, the public system in 3 of the major states of Australia has failed. It's
Yeah,
not
it's
really
ridiculous.
working.
Yeah.
So pushing more people back into the public sector, I definitely agree with that. It's definitely a loser position for them.
That's a bit. And why would you target them? There's not. I mean, there's a few of them, but there's whatever. It's $255.
They take
Yeah,
out all the good parking spots.
So
They
it's
take no more easily accessible.
No, senior parking is really
senior
wrecking
parking.
everything.
But this is, I think, like it's going to cost them an extra $255. Now, there's this working straight tax offset, $250. The reduction in the tax rate from 16 to 15%, another $250. I don't want to sound over the top, but are we all supposed to be excited about $250 handout?
Yeah.
Doesn't go far. Maybe 1-2 tanks of petrol.
Oh, what car are you
what
driving?
car are you driving? Yeah, I was going to say.
Hey?
Yeah,
We burnt $70 on the way here.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I just think, are we supposed to be bought with these small little handouts? It's
Oh,
kind of
it's
like
ridiculous.
we got $900 in COVID. Where's that? Come
Yeah.
on, like you.
It's not the hand. It's ridiculous. And if people actually step back, and the most people are, and are saying, well, my cost of living's gone up by X. It's gone up by more than $255 a week, let alone a year.
Yeah. So we're adding $10 a week.
Yeah,
Not
that's
even.
ridiculous.
$5. It's $5 a
It's
week.
$5
Yeah.
a week.
$5
Wow.
a week.
Hey?
So that's-
What does that even mean?
And when they
That's
brag
not even coffee anymore.
No,
No.
and they brag. Well, you can buy avocados cheap though. When they're bragging about tax relief on excise on fuel as a big, great thing that they've done because of what's going on in the geopolitical area. The problem with it is that's an extra tax that we pay on everything we already do
That's right.
because we pay it twice for fuel. And when we see the discount, you go, "Wow, we actually do pay a lot."
Yeah.
You know,
I know.
it's crazy. So I don't see how they're allowed to brag about that and how all they've done is made more attention to the fact that they're just charging too much tax dollars and wasting it, which is the biggest thing.
Who would have thought?
So the $250 to work out where it's going to take the government $3.2 billion. That's what they're going to give back to the workers. Well, you just agreed to spend $53 billion extra on defence.
Yeah.
So okay, you get $3 billion, but the defence gets 53, and then we're going to take more money out of the old people. Yeah, I think we're going to look at what we want to spend our money
I think
on.
I think it's terrible. I think it's
Using old people's money to fund first home buyers and use, I'm not sure that that's a good approach for any.
But in saying that, I
facility.
don't really see. There's nothing new there.
No, it's nothing new.
For first home buyers, right? It's
Nothing
already
at all.
stuff that's already been brought out.
Yeah, 100%.
So I don't understand what they. To me, really, this was a bit of it was kind of like a package up of stuff they've done with these few things thrown in, which was the negative gearing, capital gains tax, and the family trust.
Yeah.
I think that's what
And the people they're targeting with the negative gearing side, the mums and dads, it's going to hurt them. The high net guys go, great, we'll just wait.
Yeah, that's
We
right.
can buy all the new houses from 27. We
That's
don't care. We can wait.
Yeah.
And there's no problem for people having money. I think people who've worked hard and done whatever they've done to put themselves into a position
Yeah, I agree.
shouldn't be attacked because they're helping.
Yeah.
But we get back to our argument before. We seem to pay a lot of tax, and until you lose everything, you don't get support from the government, where maybe there needs to be a different structure around that.
Yeah, I can't see that change.
That apply. Not in this country, no.
I was going to say, I think we've all got to go apply for jobs with the chiefs, the PNG chiefs. There's
Yeah.
tax exemption for anyone employed by them. So
Yeah.
you don't have to pay tax in Australia.
Right.
So I think we're all going to have to go get consulting jobs with the NRL.
Oh,
Yeah.
So
Okay.
Which is interesting to see how the rest of the NRL would react when you're on
salary
200,000 here and salary caps, and the guys are only 250,000 but paying max tax. But they could go, as we know, with one of the Balmain guys, go across to PNG, get the same money, but not pay tax on it. And the Australian government's given that allowance. So how does that work?
It doesn't work.
Come on,
Doesn't
Scotty,
work.
I'm asking for
No,
answers. mate.
there
Come
is
on.
no answers, and I don't. There's only been limited answers at this table tonight, but I think we've broken it down what it means to the actual people. Sorry to tell you, you're screwed over.
Yeah.
All right. That's kind of where we're going to probably end it.
Yeah.
Unless is there any final comments?
The biggest final comment I've got is that if you need tax advice or financial advice, then come to us.
Yeah. Cool.
Today is very general. We're looking at opinions of what's online and what's in their press release. So there's a lot more work we do than these days.
All general advice.
Yeah, definitely. Look, and we're just reading what we've seen from Chalmers and what we're seeing online. Look, I think the next couple of days is going to see big information come out, especially around this family trust. Look, to me, I think it is, if you have a family trust with a small business, Look, don't ring your accountant tomorrow. They're gonna
Yes.
they're still reading. A lot of them don't even want to watch this. They don't find it as exciting and fun as it is.
Yeah.
But look, I do think forward planning between now and the 1st of July 2027. Yeah, you're gonna need a good accountant. And I'm sorry, I feel it's gonna be expensive. There's gonna be a lot of changes.
Accounts are
cost.
expensive, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we're worth it. So we
Every
get-
cent.
but bottom line is, you're talking about 30% tax on this. Tax is one of the biggest expenses you pay
Absolutely.
of your whole life. They're going to make it bigger. Get good advice.
Yeah,
That's, I think,
definitely.
this part.
Yep.
I think that's really
Third of everything you're going to earn in your life is going to go to the tax office. So, you do need good advice, and good advice, good structures helps people for the future. People get too caught up in micromanagement of advice where they think, oh, well, in the last 6 weeks, how has it helped me? It's not that. It's what's going to happen in 5 years. And that's where this planning comes in, which is, what we've looked at. So,
All right. Well, there you have it. So, look, if you need any financial planning or accounting specific advice, contact us in the office. We're going to put you in touch with the right people. And thanks for joining us tonight. It's been enjoyable as much as it's great looking at getting your legs sawn off at a doctor and getting enjoyable. That's what it is. But welcome to Australia, the land of the tax. All right, I'm Scotty North with the account, See the Financial Planner. Thanks for joining us. Until
Thank
next
you.
time,